Okay, so I recognise a few faces in the audience. For those who do know me, you'll know that I can't normally say hello in 3 or 4 minutes, but I'll have a go, okay? So, Thales, technologists, you might expect me to talk about technology, but I'm not going to. I'm going to do a quick story, a plea, a confession, and then a challenge. So, I'll start with a quick story. It's not particularly funny. In fact, maybe 15 to 20 years ago that we were sitting around, I think there was probably a weekly or even 2 a week sessions that you could go to on tolling, road user charging, how it was going to change the future, how it was going to generate revenue, how it was going to address congestion. It was probably going for 10 or 15 years before that, 15 or 20 years to be honest. Some of those consultants are still around. They've got mobility. They're just scooters generally. It got nowhere, an exception in London, but generally it hit the wall. The stakeholders, I can still remember Mr. Norris and Ken Livingstone fighting out in public debates around the benefits of different forms of taxation on vehicles, etc. And all of them were sticks. All of them were sticks. There was very few carrots. And I think it's a message here on the story would be, we're often the first to thought lead in the UK and the last to implement in many areas, and I think we need to look at ourselves a little there. So I'll move on to the plea. The plea is, let's not do it again. Please, let's not go back the same route. Let's not be here in 10 years' time talking the same thing. The imperatives here are crystal clear. I can list off some stats, and before I came, someone sent me an absolutely excellent slide pack to use, which I chose not to. It was full of stats. Actually, they speak for themselves, you know. 4% of our journeys are done in cars, cost us 85% of our time. You know, you can reel them off. You can reel off the green agenda. You can reel this off. The imperatives are clear. But the imperatives were clear 15 to 20 years ago when we talked about tolling, and it still hasn't happened. So the plea is, let's not go back round, let's stop just talking, let's just do some stuff. And an example I'd have to say is it's taken me 2.5 years to negotiate an absolutely tiny 2-mode system. So one intermodal system, talking about main roads, high roads, and motorways, to bring that together and actually get the politics and all of the other stuff out of the way for the tiniest of pilots has taken 2 years. And all it does is post some information on a motorway about the city roads. It's simple, but the stuff in the way is horrendous. The controlling mind, whatever you want to call it. Outside of London, which is a bit different, I have to say, and has that a bit more of a controlling mind, it's a really difficult task, which to a certain extent brings me on to the financial issues here, because it's very difficult for companies like Thales and many others in here investing a lot of R&D. And there's money here maybe at the consultancy type businesses, but for the R&D in the technologists, it's quite difficult at the moment. Actually keeping interest in doing the R&D in here is a challenge. So we need to look at that, and we need to understand how we keep that stimulus going, not at SME only. SMEs are very, very important, but we've got to keep the big companies interested too. And I don't just mean the pure data companies and the big play data companies. So I'll move on to a confession next. And I have to say, first of all, I'm a Londoner. Secondly, I have a car. Thirdly, it's a diesel, and that's the really sorry to be out there with it. And fourthly, you're not going to get me out of it with a stick. It's not going to work. You will not get me out of my diesel car with a stick. I need a carrot, and I need genuine alternatives. Okay? So, I'll move on to the challenge. So what's the challenge? The challenge for me is I still like having my car. But actually, go back 15, 20 years ago, I put a paper out there, poorly named, A Fair Way to Pay. What it was about personal responsibility and total ownership of the cost of your journey in the truest sense. And I mentioned my car. I lease my car, and the closest I've got to knowing my cost of journey is I now have a monthly charge on my car rather than a capital charge at the beginning. It was a little step forward, not much. And I also know that if I do too many miles, I pay a penalty for paying too many miles. But that's about the extra bit I know. I still don't really understand the cost of my journey and my choice of mode. And until we change that and people genuinely understand the cost of their journey, in the impact to the society around them, their family, their loved one, their friends, their children, the environment and all the rest of it. And until we move off of beating people to death, instead of giving them carrots and giving them ownership of the actual improvements, some form of green, budgets, whatever that might be, and we aspire to giving people ownership and change behaviours, I believe we're in danger of going around in circles and doing spot fixes by putting taxes up or charging people more to park. Okay, and with that I shall hand over. Thank you.